there, it's Sarah here from BJC Health, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Thanks for showing an interest in one of our educational events. You're about to watch part one, so enjoy the event. If you've got any questions about the content, then please consider joining BJC Connect, where you can access all of our facilitators live. Otherwise, please consider leaving a comment and we'll do our best to get back to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sarah, and thank you for having me. So Lynn, they took her phone away and her computer, so she's well and truly off the grid, which is good. She's walking the talk for healthy ageing. But tonight, although the topic is around aged care, it's really we decided to do something more general and higher level in terms of what to think about and steps to maintain independence and control in later life, because the work that we do really is meeting a lot of families and often the adult children as well as the individuals to help support a loved one in later life. And it's often as a result of a crisis. And so it's when things have been left a bit late, and we know that the outcome could be so much better if there's planning ahead. And so we're talking through those issues. And if there are any questions, please pop them in the chat box and we'll try and get through at least some of them. And so away we go. Okay, so when we meet people, and families come in to see us, what is it generally that they want? And it's actually no different to what anyone wants at any stage of life. So we'd like to press upon that, what we all want at any stage is essentially to be happy, to have support we need when we need it, whether it's from loved ones, community, outsourcing, and to have agency and control in our own life. And so how is it that do we achieve this? The best way that we find to achieve this to help people is to really start early, to think about, firstly, to get your life affairs sorted. And by life affairs, we could mean a whole number of things. We don't know how life will pan out, what is ahead. So, but we don't need to know everything. There are things within our control that we can basically put into plan. So we help people with that, because guess what? Later in life, if there is a crisis, you're going to have to run around and get all of these affairs sorted when it's under during a stressful period. So we want to avoid that. And also, to have agency, you want your own wishes to have been thought about, what your own wishes are, and you need to capture and communicate it. So what we specifically do is we help families arrange for the right type of care at the right time and in the right place. And it sounds like it's, common sense, but really there's so many different types of care and level, and that people often don't know about. There's so much out there in the community. I almost think that there's too much. There's so much information, you don't know where to start. And the right time is so important. There's things you can open the door to certain services and not actually use them now, but have them in your back pocket for later, and it makes it a lot easier. And in the right place. I mean, most Australians want to be living at home, independent, so it's in your community and at home. And if need be, it can be in another setting. But if you want those things, then there's lots you can do to achieve it. So what we're doing here is I'm sharing these phases of later life. And the reason we're doing this, we actually adopted this from a group called Aged Care Steps, who separated later life into phases, because I think we don't really look at the media would have you believe that, later life and older age looks the same. Whether you're 65 or 95, it all looks the same, which is crazy, because if you're 20 and to 50 over those 30 years, it's very different. Your life stages, your plans, what you do to, live the way you want. So taking these phases are not dependent on a number, your chronological age. They're defined by your health and capacity. And so that varies for everyone. So starting with the active years, for instance, retirement, say, for example, 65 years of age. And just to press upon, this is not linear. Life has its curveballs and differences. But this can be generally a way to look at later life in phases. So the active years are generally when we live independently, our health is relatively good, and it can form about half your retirement years. You may have just retired and, you want to get out there and enjoy life, travel, spend time with the family, grandkids, consult, continue to work, study. There's so much that can be done during that active phase of retirement, and to think about at that stage. There's a transition period, and that transition crosses across over to what is called the quiet years. And they're quieter because maybe you've gone and done all that, the travel and the, studies or the semi-retirement, and the grandkids may have grown up, so things are quieter and has slowed down a bit. You might find this is the stage where you might need a little bit of support to do a few things, or it's a good idea to allow that. And you might have a few aches and pains. With age comes certain your body's been doing a great job for a long time, and there might be wear and tear, and there are supports there to help maintain health and your activities. And it forms about a third of retirement years. And then there's a transition again. And I heard a geriatrician say if you've won the DNA lottery, you get to live to these older years. And the frailty years only formulate the last few years of life. And of course, that coincides with an increase in care needs and also costs associated with it. And that's the time where there might be some challenges with mobility or other impairments, whether they're physical or cognitive with brain health. And we've added the fourth phase because we know that it's really important, end of life. It's something to think about and to talk about and to plan for, not just for, and you can plan for before end of life or how you envisage end of life, and also for after. And that's more about the people left behind, your loved ones. So they're the phases. And our objective with the tips that we imparting in this presentation is to help people to think about things and put things in action in order to prolong those active years and quiet years. You can prolong those years if you really, want to be in control and have independence. And by, when you do that, you get to shorten those frailty years and end of life, perhaps postpone it a bit. But how do we do that? What we see works best is to approach it, your plans and life, from a healthy aging approach versus a sick care approach, which is very much what's happening, especially here in the Western world. But groups like BJC and this BJC Connect, these events, they're very much, from what I've seen, is fantastic because it's about healthy aging, to enjoy life and later life. So how do we do this? What we're going to talk about tonight is elements to protect and action early within for your physical wellness, mental wellness. So that's just as important, if not more so, and also getting your affairs sorted. So these are the practical things you can do. If you're the type of person that wants to tick things off the list, these are actually, getting these affairs sorted is actually about having peace of mind so that you can get on with the business of living. Okay, so what we've done is, for tonight, in the interest of time, we're just going to focus on two key elements where decision-making is needed, and when to decide and why. And it's much earlier than what we generally see, but we'd like to help. So as part of our literacy in aged care and later life, we really want to, it's a change management and change in mindset about planning for later life as seriously as we used to plan for our earlier life. We used to plan for, our education, our career, when we're going to build a family, build a home. Had to be planned for and steps taken. And yet somehow when we get to retirement, we're not that good at doing that. So this is a way to think about things. Okay, so I mentioned that there were two main components I'll focus on tonight. Um, the first is the living arrangements, because it's something we think is really relatable. And we see a lot of families, or where the person we're there to support is older, maybe closer to the frailty years. And a lot of the outcomes that haven't been so good is because where they're living has not kept up. It's not fit for purpose at that stage of life. So what we're going to look at first is the active years. So in your active years, hopefully you're enjoying life. You've got a bit more freedom if you're not working as much or at all. Um, where you live in your home and what your lifestyle is like, you need to find a way and find an environment or build an environment around you that works for you physically and in proximity to what's around you. So that's where often downsizing comes into it, and it's probably a bit earlier than when a lot of people think of it, but we really suggest people start thinking about it early. If you're someone that says and maintains, I want to live at home independently throughout my life, then this is the best phase to get things happening, and I'll explain why. So your environment, make it future-proof, age-friendly. Now, the term age-friendly, sometimes people see it as negative, age, old age, whatever. Every environment needs to be age-friendly for every stage, whether we've got toddlers in the home, children, it has to be age-friendly for all of us. And there are some cities that are becoming age-friendly communities, like Manchester and New York. And I think Melbourne is a front runner in Australia in that way for some areas. Is it fall safe for the future? Is it a 1-story, 2 or 3 stories? Those things are things to think about earlier and make plans for. Now, on the mental well-being side, where you live, it's really important to think about proximity to your friends, family, community and services. Is your local GP close by, the shops, the pharmacy, the transport? The litmus test is where people know your name. If you go to your pharmacy, have you been going for years? Do they know who you are? As you get older, what what you need, and get to know you. It's your community. We mentioned resilience and motivation here as well. In your active years, this is when you have the most resilience and motivation to really look at your living arrangements and act on finding something for the future if it needs changing. And it doesn't always need changing, but this is when you can do it and should start thinking about it. In terms of living arrangements and getting your affairs sorted, for many, your home is really your biggest financial asset. And so thinking about your financial arrangements, estate planning, your legacy, this is really important at this stage around what your assets are. So that's common sense and very high level, but I'll touch on a few other things about this later. But we really want to encourage people to start thinking about this early. Now, when you transition into your quiet years, and with your health, things change. ADL, that's a term that's used a lot with services for activities and daily living. What is your daily living and your routine life at this stage? Is your mobility, is it the same, or your cognition? It's really important to know this, and that the home you're in is suitable and fit for purpose. There might be an opportunity to make some modifications at this stage. So you may or may not know for yourself or a loved one, there are some great government subsidised modifications that you can look at for now. And we really encourage people to look at those before there's an accident or a fall. Don't do it as a result of that. Do it beforehand. And they don't all have to look ugly and like facilities. And I think people forget that as we get older, we don't lose our sense of style or wanting something that looks in keeping with our lifestyle. And downsize, is it the right time? But I would say this is, if you have it, you need to have done it in these 2 phases, because the resilience and the motivation goes after that. So in terms of mental well-being in the quieter years, the window sort of starts to close a little bit. You're seeing less. If the grandkids have grown up, you're travelling less, for example. This is when you need to counter what you feel like doing, which is maybe staying at home more, and actually get out there and explore your own community, make connections. The local community centres have amazing activities now. If it's for you or your parents, ring them up, look it up online. There's so much happening that people have no idea about, that are worth, exploring. There could be exercise classes, chair yoga, outings. It's a good way to make friends. Also adapting with changes. So in the quieter years, some changes have occurred, but getting used to the fact that this is another life transition, life phase. And so those can adapt to changes in anything will really fare a lot better with what comes, and who are pragmatic and actually look at what's happening to make plans. In terms of affairs, well, living arrangements. If you're at home, you always need to look at the implications, especially financially, of ingoing, ongoing, and outgoing costs. So when you live at home, ingoing, if you've bought the house, there was a big ingoing cost. Or ongoing, if you're renting or paying a mortgage, and exit costs just to do with the sale, for example. If things change, though, and your living arrangements become something more like the independent living model or retirement village, that is a whole different kettle of fish. It's like buying a home, but the ingoing costs might be significant. But it's under the Retirement Villages Act, which is completely separate to aged care that's federally funded. It's usually under the Retirement Villages Act is state-based, so it's different in every state. And for each independent living complex or retirement village, there's an agreement that really needs to be looked at, because so you really understand the upfront costs, ongoing, and especially in this case, the exit costs. This is where costs that are called deferred management fees might come into play, and it's different, but it could be a lot of the fees for maintaining this home, say you were in for 10, 15 years, there's a 35% of it must be paid back before you leave or when you sell. So it's really important to understand this. And for aged care, that's federally subsidised for everybody to different degrees depending on your means. So something to think about seriously by the time you're in your quieter years, where you want to be and why. And just a tip that retirement village life and independent living, it's a place where it might initially not seem great financially, but the lifestyle benefits of the community, the activities, ease of living is fantastic. So it's best to go, if you're thinking of that, the sooner you move to that sort of setting, the more you'll enjoy it for much longer. Okay, so just to stress upon, the best window to make a move is when you've got the resilience and motivation to do these big things like move home, if that's what will happen. In the frailty years, what happens is the window to make any changes really is much smaller. And, at that stage, it becomes more about safety rather than preference, where you'd like to live, because, first of all, the number of years in that new setting will be less. And if safety is the highest element, your choices will be, less if you don't make those decisions earlier. So say one option is to stay at home, which most Australians want. If you're in your frailty years, it's most likely that you'll need some support at home. So it could be a mix of the highest level for care services, plus potentially private care, and I'll explain later. And often there's an informal carer, and that could be your spouse. It could be adult children close by, but it's not just about the individual. It's also who else it impacts and their role. Or you could go into residential aged care in frailty years. You could be in a retirement village also, but it's like at home. You will still need to be getting other services to support you. But with residential care, as far as a living arrangement is concerned, there are things to consider. If you're moving there, does that mean a separation from someone that's been, your spouse for decades? It changes the way you live. So then in a way, you're living in a single living setting, but there are others for social elements. So it really does change things for everyone in the household. In terms of mental well-being, again, as we're in the frailty years, our world does get smaller because we can't get out and go and do things like we used to. We're less motivated to. They're often at home people that are the biggest portion of single-person homes in this later age stage. And in aged care, there are considerations. It can be safer, medication management, the care's there, and the social element is there for you. That's something you don't have to go out and seek. And in terms of your affairs sorted, we really hope that by your frailty years, you have got all your affairs sorted that we've talked about above in the living arrangements and all arrangements, to focus on yourself, the care needs and well-being. So outside of this, the next I'm going to talk about is care. But I just wanted to quickly show this before I talked about the care services, is the aged care system. Now, the reality of the aged care system, and for those of you that are here tonight, some of you may have been accessing it for loved ones or for yourself, but the reality is there's so many. At the top, we've just put some of the government services. You would need to engage with several organisations, many of them government ones, with different moving parts. There's also the traditional services on the left in the grey, your financial advisors, the lawyers, property and so forth. So when you're engaging with the aged care system, then you maybe need to get advice, professional advice. It's really worthwhile to make that time and investment to get the right advice. And then there's the health system. And I've got in red down the bottom carer support. It's really important to remember who the carer is, because at some point in life, we will either be a care recipient when we're older or frail, and or a care giver, an informal caregiver. So that's our spouse or, a loved one that lives close by, or even if living overseas. We've got clients that are living overseas, both adult children in different countries that engage us because they're worried and they're trying to provide support, which can be done. So it's who is the carer? And carer doesn't mean someone that's living with you only. So it can be family that doesn't live with you. This is at the time when you're also suddenly engaging with whether it's aged care homes, independent living, I mentioned, and home care services. It's good to engage with community, and there's all sorts of different, you can tap into all sorts of different services to support with your needs. The problem we're seeing, though, is with the consumer and the individuals and families, getting these two groups together is a bit of a minefield and can be beyond a lot of people. So we're trying to bridge that gap.
So you've just finished watching part 1 of one of our recent educational events. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you'd like to access part 2, then you need to sign up for BJC Connect. It's a free platform where you can access not just the recordings of past events, but also access a whole range of upcoming future events and access our team of facilitators live. All of the details that you need to join BJC Connect are now flashing up on your screen. But otherwise, like our staff, subscribe if you'd like to see more information from BJC Health. Look forward to seeing you in an event soon.